This is the cat's whisker, and Chris Williams recommended this fly to us and said it's become really popular with East Texas fly fishers for white bass, or barfish as we call it here. It's originally a still water trout pattern, and but I can't help but believe the way it looks, it would work for, of course, our white bass, but almost anything like a fluff butt jig kind of pattern. It uses bead chain eyes, some type of like Estaz or ice dub chenille and marabou, and that's pretty much all the materials for the fly. So let's get to tying here.
What's the hook, Bill?
This hook is a Gamakatsu B10s in size 8, but I think the pattern's pretty agnostic to what fly or what hook you use. I think almost anything will work in various sizes. I just chose it because, one, I like the hook a lot. It's a really, really sharp hook, and it's a strong hook. So if you take this somewhere and hook into a big fish, even on this size 8, I don't think you'll have any trouble. So I first go ahead and I lay down an entire hook shaft of thread base, and then I leave my thread hanging at I want it about 1.5 eye lengths back, because I'm going to tie my bead chain eyes in about 1.5 eye lengths back there. So that's an eye, and that's about a half. So that should be about right, because I need room at the front to tie in that Estaz. So to tie the eye in, I just hold it at an angle. Hold it at an angle on the hook, and I like to give it just 3 or 4 snug but not tight wraps, and then straighten it out and give it 3 or 4 more in the other direction, and then just do a few figure 8s. And then I like to do, I don't know if there's an official name, but I call them stirrup wraps, because that's kind of what they look like. Over the top of one side, under the hook, over the top of the other side, under the hook, over the top, under, over, under. Do that 3 or 4 times, and then finally a cinch wrap at the top, where I wrap horizontally under the eyes but on top of the hook. And that really snugs that eye down. Okay, tail is marabou, and we're using white. And because we're snugging this marabou up against the eye, I like to trim it. And the length of the tail is totally up to you, but I like about 1.5 hook shaft length, so I'm going to trim it right about there. And we just tie that in and wrap it back to just above the barb of the hook. And that's our tail. And then we'll bring our thread back and leave it hanging about the point. And the next material is the Estaz. And again, I just chose Estaz. You can choose pretty much any material you like. And I like to strip a few of the fibers off and expose that core. And then wrap that back to right at the base of your tail. And then bring your thread forward, to just behind the eyes. Right there. And then we wrap it. And I like to sweep it like I do hackle. Each time I take a wrap of Estaz, it keeps you from wrapping on top of the fibers quite as much. And so I wrap to just behind the eye. Then take a couple of wraps of thread over the Estaz and tie it down. And don't cut the Estaz off yet. Leave it hanging. And next we'll tie our wing in, which is more marabou. And we want it about the same length as our tail, so I'll trim it right about there. Get that trimmed. And then I tie it in on top of the Estaz, right behind the eyes. So just snug it down. The Estaz will get in the way a little bit, so just snug it down and tie it in right behind the eye. And give it some nice tight wraps here, because it will pull out, because it's a really short tying point, because we're not tying very far back. I'm only tying, maybe an eighth of an inch of it there or so. All right, so that's tied in. And let me untwist my Estaz here. And so once the marabou is tied in, I'll move my thread in front of the eyes and then take one wrap behind the eyes to cover up all those thread wraps. And then I go under and forward and just make a figure 8 forward over the eye, under the eye, and back. So I just made a figure 8 over the eyes in front. And then I just tie down right in front. Trim that off, hold it back, and no matter what you do with this stuff, you're going to tie down some of the fibers in the front. And that's pretty much it. Do your whip finish or your half hitch, whatever you like. I'm going to use a half hitch here because the nice thing about the half hitch tool with the little hole in the end, it actually helps push back those fibers, as you can see there. Pushes them back and clears the eye a little bit. And that's it. Quick and easy tie.